After almost 3 years on the road as full-time RVers, we have accumulated a lot of RV accessories. And today we're going to be sharing our top 9 accessories for RV safety and security. Welcome back to Adventurous Way. I'm Matt and behind the camera is Diana. And like I say, we have got a lot to cover today. We want to show you some of the accessories that we find most valuable for RV safety and security. Now, you may remember in a recent video, we showed you the accessories that we felt were absolutely essential for RV travel. And the ones today are kind of like some nice to have things. With the exception of just one item today, all the others we've been using for at least 2 years on the road. And all of these things we've paid for in full with our own money. So there is no sponsorship going on here. This is just our opinion. The first one that I want to start with is something that has saved us more than once and on more than one occasion. That is our tire pressure monitoring system, or TPMS. And this is really, really important. I would definitely recommend you have one of these if you're doing any amount of RV travel. Modern cars come with a tire pressure monitoring system already installed, but that's not the case for trailers oftentimes. A tire pressure monitoring system works by having sensors on each tire that monitor the pressure inside the tire at all times, and oftentimes they also monitor the temperature as well. Temperature is a big cause of tire blowout. If the tire pressure is too low, for example, the rubber will flex more as you drive, which causes a lot of heat and potentially eventually a blowout. We're using the EEZ tire wireless tire pressure monitoring system. So we have this little sensor attached to each of the valve stems on the 4 tires around the trailer. These connect wirelessly to a little display that we keep in the truck. It just sort of mounts on the windshield. We are using a booster that sits inside under the bed where our electronic systems are, and that system has been working really well for us. On more than one occasion, that has actually been how we've detected a flat tire, and honestly, when the alarm went off, I wouldn't have known that something was wrong. I wasn't feeling bad handling, but in each case, within seconds of that alarm going off, you could see the temperature drop, the pressure drop way down. And fortunately, we were able to quickly pull over and deal with the situation by changing the tyre until we could get a replacement or a repair. A tyre pressure monitoring system is something I would consider absolutely essential, to be honest. It's one of those things where we've heard too many stories about people not having these who haven't realised, and they've had this flat tyre or low pressure tyre for too long, and eventually it's caused a blowout with catastrophic damage. As that kind of tyre can explode, it can really cause a lot of damage along here, if not something more substantial if you lose control of the vehicle. So for us, that's an absolute must-have. We did make a small change to the EEZ tyre one, purely just cosmetic. The display unit that we had was this kind of green colour, and so we actually took it apart and spray painted that head unit black so it fits a bit nicer in the truck. Otherwise, there are other brands. TST is another brand that we've heard good things about. They're all pretty similar in the way they work, but as long as you have one, that's the main thing. In addition to monitoring for serious situations like tyre blowouts, a TPMS is also a great way just to make sure that your tyres aren't slowly losing air over time or as the temperature is changing. And if your tyres are a little bit low, you're going to need an air compressor. This is the compressor that we carry around. This is the Wyze 400p, and it's actually the RV edition. So this plugs in to 12 volts on your vehicle, and it comes with the main hose, the primary hose to then inflate your tires. The RV version comes with an extra extension, one of these, so if you need to reach down a really long RV, that's really useful. On our trailer, that's not so much of a problem, but it has been useful in the past to reach over to someone else's trailer, for example, to help them out. And then it comes with this gauge and the adapter to connect onto the tire valve to inflate the tire. I've actually found this valve to be very accurate. We've got a couple of analog and digital tire gauges that we keep in the truck. And I found that after you've been inflating, if you press kind of the little release button on the side just for a second, this gauge is actually pretty accurate. So I've been impressed with that. One modification that I did make to this compressor was to actually splice in this Anderson connector on the power cable. So originally it came with just the regular sort of battery clamps to connect to the 12-volt battery under your tow vehicle, like in the engine bay of your tow vehicle. So what I did is I spliced in this Anderson plug so I can still connect these together, and then I have my regular battery clamps on there. But I also made this little short cable here that then I can join in, and this connects onto the connector under here, just on the back bumper, and that's what we normally plug the trailer into to power our DC to DC charger. But oftentimes it's easier to set this up on the tailgate, plug this in back here rather than popping the hood and connecting to the battery terminals. You don't need to do that though. You can just keep it regular with the standard battery clamps, and it's very easy to use. I would really recommend having one of these. Oftentimes, if you have a larger vehicle, like a motorhome, for example, you may find that the air pumps at gas stations can't actually get a high enough pressure for what you're going to need on your vehicle. For us, that actually isn't an issue, but it's really nice to have this so that if we do need to change a tire at the side of the road, we can make sure that the spare is at the right pressure compared with everything else, as well as just as we're moving from warmer to cooler climates and back again, we can make sure that our tire pressures are always exactly where they need to be for that cold temperature. So again, air compressor, highly recommended. One item you may not think of as a safety item is this, an infrared temperature gun. We got this early on in our RV travels, and one of the things that we use this for is actually checking all of our electrical connections. If you've got any kind of loose connection, it will start to build up heat, and using one of these, you can very quickly identify those connections. It is also useful as well if you want to spot check anywhere on the RV that you think might be getting warm. So for example, if you've just done a really long descent with the trailer, you can come and check the brakes and things and make sure that they're not getting too hot. So I would recommend having one of these as well. In addition to the safety aspect of having a temperature gun like this, there are also lots of other things that we've ended up using it for over time. So for example, we did some tests of reflectix in our windows to see how much of a difference that makes, and even just things like making sure your beers are cold. So next up on our list is something that a few people actually commented as being an essential RV accessory. And to be honest, there's a strong case to be made for that. That is a first aid kit. We have this compact first aid kit that we keep in the truck, and that way whenever we go out for a hike, we can easily just grab it and take it with us. In addition to this, we have more extensive first aid things in the trailer that we can use if we need to, but I would highly recommend you have a first aid kit in your RV somewhere. Also make sure you go through and you know how to use the things that are in here. You make sure that things aren't expired. And also if you have any specialist things, either medicines that you need or particular injuries that you know you're prone to, make sure that your kit has the things in that are going to work for you. A couple of years ago, when we were in Colorado, we also took the opportunity to do a wilderness first aid course. And that was great because that went through in a lot more detail how to use some of the things in here, but also how to improvise when you're in a wilderness situation and maybe you don't have all the equipment that you need. It's kind of one step on the road to becoming a first responder or even an EMT. And we really enjoyed that course. We learned a lot from it. And just having the confidence to know how to use everything in your first aid kit is, I think, really valuable. Continuing on the theme of personal safety, we have a bug out bag. Now you can buy lots of different sizes of these, and actually we have 3 of these. This is the real small one that we keep in the truck, and it contains kind of basic things. It's got a whistle and a flashlight, head torch. It's got some waterproof matches, some hand warmers, those sorts of things inside. And that way, when we're in the truck, if we just needed to grab it, we keep it inside the cab and we could just grab it and run if we had to, if something happened to the truck and we just needed to get out. We have that on hand there. We then keep a slightly larger one in the truck bed. So if the vehicle was stranded somewhere, we would be able to grab that kit and leave. And that has provisions and more extensive sort of first aid and safety equipment in there that would keep us safe for a while. And then we even have a third one that we keep inside the RV. It's always readily accessible in a storage bay. So if for some reason we had to abandon the RV, we've got that as a backup instead. Hopefully it never comes to that. Hopefully you never find yourself in that situation. But these kits contain a lot of really useful little things. And occasionally we just find ourselves digging into one of these for some matches or something when we've run out. And so I do recommend having a look at the options available and seeing if one of those would make sense for your style of RVing. Moving inside the RV, one of the things I want to talk about is fire extinguishers. Our RV had a single fire extinguisher when we bought it. It's just located just inside the door there, and we didn't feel that was sufficient, so we added a couple of these. We bought these online. These are non-toxic, they're really easy to use, and yeah, we sort of recommend having a couple of extra fire extinguishers. The ones in an RV are typically filled with powder. They do have a tendency to settle from all that vibration on the road. So make sure that that fire extinguisher is sort of regularly just inverted upside down just to stop that powder from forming into a solid at the bottom of the can. but also consider getting some extras as well. These aren't super expensive. They can be used on electric, fabric, wood, grease, and even car fires. They're really easy to use. It's just kind of a trigger on top. And yeah, they're pretty clean and safe. So I would recommend having these. We keep one of these inside the RV where it's really accessible and we can get to it quickly if we needed to in the kitchen, for example. We also keep one of these in the truck as a backup. And fortunately, we've never had to use one of these in an emergency situation. But if that happens, knowing that we've got those extras would be really useful. We do know friends, so Phil and Stacey from You, Me and the RV, not too long ago, they came across a fire on someone else's RV going down the road, and they were able to deploy their fire extinguishers pretty quickly just to give those other people a little bit of extra time to get their toad disconnected from the RV. So yeah, definitely carry a fire extinguisher in the RV. I want to move on from safety to talk a little bit about security. There are lots of things that we can do as RVers to make sure that we are secure, that we're not going to be at risk of theft, for example. Now, the first and most obvious thing that you can do as an RVer to keep yourself secure is to not leave your RV or not travel with your RV to somewhere that you don't feel safe and secure. And I can say that in 3 years of travel, that's never happened. We've never found ourselves in a situation that we didn't feel safe. But should that happen, we always say to ourselves, if we arrive and we don't feel safe, we will just leave. We always try and have a plan B, somewhere else that we can go, so that should that happen, we can do that. That doesn't mean, however, that we don't take some basic precautions. One of the first things that we bought when we bought the RV was actually a coupler lock. So it goes into the pin, and it has another one keyed the same that goes to the coupler latch on our travel trailer. These are obviously specific to travel trailers. If you do have a fifth wheel, then there are similar style ones available that go onto the coupler there. And if you have a motorhome with a toad, there are locking options there that you might want to look at. This one's looking a little bit worse for wear after our trip to Oregon recently. In all of the bad weather on the roads, the chemicals have worked pretty hard on this. And it's basically just a lock and a pin. It's not going to hold up against a determined thief who really wants to steal your trailer. They'll find a way just hammering this off would probably break it off. But it'll deter the opportunistic thief who wanted to disconnect your trailer from your truck. The coupler latch pin also goes through where you could normally put the little clevis pin through, and that stops someone from just opportunistically popping that out and uncoupling your truck and your trailer. These weren't expensive, and we really liked having these, particularly the coupler latch, in our storage unit when we used to store the RV before we hit the road. It was just an extra level of security to give us a little bit of confidence that no one was going to be able to steal our RV. But what gave us a lot of confidence was this. Oh, this one's heavy. This is our Proven Industries coupler lock. And this thing is heavy. It is made, I think, of 1/4-inch steel, and it's seriously, seriously heavy duty. The way it works is it has a simple puck lock on the front, and you can disengage that with a key. And so that pops off, and then this whole assembly slides apart. This part of it will slip up inside the coupler, and you can put it there. And then the main housing goes on over the top. And then the puck lock simply drops on, and the key pops out, like that. So that thing is really, really strong. If anything, the weak point on here is actually the puck lock. And there are options if you want to. It's just a standard puck lock. So you can upgrade this with something like the multi-lock. I think the 5T Plus TR100 is a really good upgrade opportunity for this, if you felt that this wasn't secure enough already. We just, out of habit, tend to put this on anytime we arrive somewhere. We just grab this. You saw how quick it is to take on and off. So we just tend to grab this out of the storage bay, lock it on the front of our trailer, and we are then really confident that someone isn't going to get through this in a hurry. Again, a determined thief will always find a way to steal something if they really want to. But for us, it's about just being secure enough that we're not the easiest target. Don't make it so easy for an opportunistic thief just to come along and steal your trailer, especially if, like us, you're full-timers, so you've got a lot of valuable things inside, as well as the trailer itself. Everything we've talked about so far, we have had for a couple of years, but the next item is something we've only had for about 6 months, and that is this Wyze Outdoor Cam. This is a fairly recent product. It hasn't been out that long, and we picked one up as soon as it was available for pre-order. We've been using the Wyze Indoor Cam for a while, not really for anything security related, just as a fun thing to play around with and see what we could find to like watch the trailer as we're driving down the road and things like that. We have also set it up when we've been out for the day just to keep an eye on things inside the trailer, and even for looking at wildlife, for example, over in the desert. But one of the problems with the indoor camera is it's not waterproof, and that's where this one comes in. This is a Wi-Fi camera, so it connects to the Wi-Fi in our RV. So you do need to make sure you have Wi-Fi and that you're connected to the internet inside the RV. That's something that we have set up, and if you're interested in seeing how we do that, check out our blog post all about our RV internet setup. What's cool about this is not only does it use Wi-Fi, so there's no wires for that, there's also no power cables. It is just a battery-powered camera, and it attaches using this mount, this little swivel and tilt mount. And what's super cool is it's just on a magnetic base. So you can easily move these around. We've attached the two bases, one on the front of the RV and one on the side. We have no windows in the front, so we can't easily see what's going on. So if we hear a noise in the night or we're just interested in seeing what's going on, we've got this camera here. It's also been useful to see kind of when our propane refill guy comes along. We can actually see that that's arrived. So it is a useful thing for security. Being able to check on this from wherever you are when you're away from the RV is also really cool. But also just looking out for wildlife and things like that. There's all sorts of ways that you can use these cameras. So if you haven't already done so, I highly recommend you check out our blog post with a review of the Wyze Outdoor Cam and how we use it as RVers. One of the things that we like to do is we always take these off when we're traveling, but because they are portable and battery powered, we can then just leave them, for example, in the truck overnight if we're staying in a rest stop or something, and that way we can keep an eye on the truck as well from inside the trailer. People often wonder how long the battery will last on something like this. We put this up in kind of November, I think it was, when we arrived in Vermont, and by the time we left to go to Oregon in, what was it, early March, I guess, the battery still hadn't drained fully. So that is, what, 4 or 5 months of usage in some really cold temperatures as well, which are normally pretty harsh on batteries. It will go through the batteries quicker if you have more events triggering it. Where we are here, there wasn't a lot going on this winter in the campground, so it was pretty quiet. But yeah, the battery life is pretty good on these, and they just recharge from USB, so it's dead easy to charge them back up again. So there you have it. That is a quick tour around our top 9 safety and security RV accessories. These are things, like I say, with the exception of the Wyze camera here, that we've been using for several years on the road now, and we really like, and they're things that we find make us feel safer and more secure on the road. But leave us a comment below. Let us know what you think of the things we've shared and maybe things we've missed out. What else should we be looking out for the absolute top RV accessories for keeping us safe and secure on the road? And we will see you in the next video.